The morning my daughter Paula told me she didn't want me at her wedding, I was standing in my kitchen in Lorain, Ohio, holding a coffee cup I'd had since 1987, and the first thing I noticed was that the headache behind my right eye wasn't there. It had been there almost every morning for 20 years. That morning it wasn't. And for about 4 seconds I stood there aware of both things at once, the absence of the pain and the presence of what Paula had just said. And I couldn't work out which one was stranger. That was June of 2003. I had been retired from the school for 13 months. Paula got married in September of that year in Cleveland. I was not there. Gerald went. He came home and set his car keys on the counter and said, "It was a nice ceremony," and went to bed. And I sat in the kitchen until about 11 at night, not moving very much, and the headache didn't come back. I've had 20 years to think about what Paula knew at 32, that I didn't know at 59. The surprising part isn't that she was right. The surprising part is that I had watched the exact same thing happen to someone else 11 years earlier, and still didn't recognize it when it was happening to me. I'm 83 years old now. The headache is long gone. I notice its absence most mornings, the way you notice the spot on the wall where a picture used to hang. I want to tell you what I figured out. Not the part about Paula. That part you can probably already see coming. The part underneath it. The part I've never quite heard anyone name correctly. I started teaching 3rd grade in Lorain in September of 1964. Gerald and I had been married 2 years. Karen wasn't born yet. I was good at teaching. Genuinely good. The kind of good where children who were behind in August were caught up by November, and parents asked specifically to have their child in my class, and the other teachers came to me with questions they didn't take to the principal. I noticed I was good at it the same way you notice a faucet that works perfectly. You don't remark on it, you just use it. In 1978, the district asked me to take on Washington Elementary. Principal. I said yes without taking more than a day to decide. Karen was 10, Paula was 7. What I did not understand at 34, and I want to be precise about this because the not understanding was not stupidity, it was a specific kind of blindness, was that the job would ask for the same things my daughters needed from me. Not similar things, the same things: patience, attention, the ability to sit with a child who is struggling and not rush toward the solution, the willingness to stop what you're doing and look at what's actually in front of you. I had a fixed amount of that each day. I know that now. I did not know it then. There was a woman on my staff named Cecelia Marsh, 4th grade teacher. She'd been at Washington since 1971, and she was the best classroom teacher I'd ever seen work. One of those people who could hold 26 8-year-olds in the palm of her hand without raising her voice once. I'll come back to what happened to Cecelia, but first I need to tell you what my school days actually required, because without that, the rest of this doesn't add up correctly. A principal in a Title I school in Lorain, Ohio in 1985 started work at 6:45 in the morning. My first task most days was a parent who had a problem, a real one usually, a child who'd been hit, or a family that had no heat, or a teacher who'd said something that landed wrong. By 7:30, I had absorbed whatever that parent brought in. By 8:15, I had absorbed the next thing. By noon, I had been the patient, attentive, solution-finding person for approximately 6 different situations, and I still had 4 hours of school left and a stack of district paperwork that didn't care what kind of morning I'd had. I drove home at 6:15 most evenings. Karen and Paula ate dinner with Gerald at 5:30. He was good at dinner, quiet but present. They talked to him about their days and he listened, and he told them what he'd seen at the plant, and it was ordinary and sufficient, and he did it every night for 18 years without asking for credit for it. I arrived at 6:15. The dishes were done. Some of you do this. You arrive after the dishes are done, and you call it providing. In 1992, I was 52, Karen was 24 and already gone. Paula was 21 and in her last year at Kent State. Cecelia Marsh's daughter came to enroll her own child at Washington Elementary. Her name was Dina. She was 27. Her daughter was 5 years old, starting kindergarten. I processed the enrollment, standard paperwork, and then Dina said, out of nowhere, that her mother had talked about me often, that Cecelia had retired 2 years prior and was living in Florida, and Dina hoped I was taking better care of myself than her mother had. I asked what she meant. Dina looked at me the way someone looks at you when they've assumed you already know something. She said, "My mother gave everything to her students. I mean everything. We got—" and then she paused and chose a word carefully. "We got the remainder." The remainder. I wrote the word down that night in the back of my planner. I did not write anything next to it. I did not need to. I understood exactly what Dina meant. In the specific way you understand something you have been not understanding on purpose for 14 years. I was giving Washington Elementary my full capacity every day. Gerald and Karen and Paula were getting the remainder. The headache behind my right eye was present that night in a specific way, lower than usual, at the top of the neck, like a clamp that had been slowly tightening since 1978 and was just now letting me notice it. I did not change what I was doing. I want to be honest about that. I understood what Dina had said, and I went to work the next morning, and I was the patient, attentive, solution-finding person for the next 10 years, until I retired in 2002. That is the confession. Not the missing, the knowing, and the continuing. Here is what I've had 20 years to understand about the mistake, and why it isn't the mistake most people think it is when they hear about Paula and the wedding. The mistake was not that I worked hard. Gerald worked hard. Cecelia worked hard. Plenty of people work hard and don't lose their daughters. The mistake was something narrower. It was this. I never once sat down with Karen or Paula and said out loud, in plain words, that I knew the school was getting more of me than they were. I never named it. I never gave them a place to put that fact except inside themselves, where it sat for 20 and 30 years, growing quieter and heavier, the way things do when they're never taken out and examined. Cecelia never named it either. I know that because Dina's face in my office told me. That specific look of someone who had carried something for a long time without anyone ever acknowledging it needed carrying. My Karen. She handled it differently than Paula. She built a life in Denver that had very little room for me in it, and when I visited it was pleasant and organized and exactly 72 hours long. She is not angry, she is managed, which in some ways is a quieter version of the same problem. Paula was angrier. Paula needed the anger to be visible. I respect that more now than I did at 59 standing in my kitchen with a coffee cup from 1987. The journalist who spent an afternoon with Norma Wakefield in her house in Lorain in the fall of 2022 noted that she spoke about Washington Elementary with something close to affection. The names of teachers, specific children, a boiler that broke in January of 1994 in the middle of a cold snap, and what she did about it. She spoke about Karen and Paula with the same even tone, and only stopped once, briefly, when she mentioned the coffee cup. She did not explain the pause. She moved on. What I know now that I did not know at 34 or 44 or 52, the capacity for presence is not unlimited. It draws down. If you spend it all in one place, not carelessly, not selfishly, but genuinely, doing real work that matters, it is still spent. The people at home get the remainder whether you intend it or not. The only variable you control is whether you name it. I should have sat down with Karen when she was 14 and said, "I know I come home empty most nights. That is not because of you." I should have said it plainly and let her answer plainly, and not protected either of us from the plainness of it. I should have said the same thing to Paula at 11, and at 16, and at 22. I didn't. I told myself they understood. Children don't understand what they're not told. They construct explanations from what's available. What was available to Karen and Paula was a mother who was warm and patient and fully present with other people's children 5 days a week, and arrived at 6:15 to a kitchen where the dishes were already done. They built their explanations from that. I can't argue with what they built. You think naming it will make it worse. It won't. What makes it worse is the space where the naming should be. Children fill that space with the only material they have, which is themselves. Paula has 2 children now, a boy of 14 and a girl of 11. We speak most Sundays. Not long, 20 minutes, sometimes 30. There are topics we don't go near yet. Maybe we will. Maybe not. What I know is that for the last 6 years, I have said things to her out loud that I kept in the planner for 20 years before that. And the conversations are different now. Not fixed. Different. The headache is gone. Has been since a few months after I retired. My skull just released. 22 years of daily pressure, and it let go in a couple of months like a fist that finally got tired. I think about Cecelia Marsh in Florida. I don't know if Dina ever told her what she said to me in my office in 1992. I hope she did. I hope Cecelia had someone to say it to. The children you spend everything on will become adults who got everything. The children you come home to after will notice the arithmetic. They won't say it out loud. They'll just do the math quietly and spend 30 years living inside the answer. Name what you're doing while there's still someone young enough to hear it. The remainder is not nothing, but it needs to be handed over honestly, not left on the counter like a set of car keys and a report that the ceremony was nice.